there, and welcome to another episode of DIY AI. This time, we're going to be talking about sleep trend analysis. So, for anybody who's a parent of a young child, it's pretty obvious when your sleep is disrupted, and getting back to that normal rhythm is pretty difficult to do. I decided to track my sleep for several weeks to kind of figure out what it was that was keeping me from reaching the maximum amount of good sleep that I could get on a given night. So, I originally went to Chat GPT again, which is probably my favorite LLM at this point, and I prompted it with the following prompt. I essentially wanted to start tracking my sleep. Through the several weeks that we did this, I was able to expand from my original prompt, which was only 5 different factors, and ultimately it ended up tracking 17 different contributors as I started to identify trends in my night to night sleep. Once I was done tracking my sleep, I went back to ChatGPT and I wanted to have a thorough breakdown and understanding of what it was that was contributing to good or poor night's sleep. I tracked my sleep for 17 days. My average sleep score was a 3.4 out of 5, which honestly was higher than I had expected. I was able to identify my best night as well as my worst night. And from there, I was able to kind of break down different types of trends that might be contributing positively or negatively. I was able to identify that on days that I was able to have a morning workout, not an evening workout, but a morning workout, I ended up having a higher sleep score. Um, on days that I had low allergy symptoms, of course, I was able to sleep better because there was a lot less pressure in my sinuses. One of the things that ChatGPT actually suggested that I start doing was taking allergy medication before bed and actually doing some nasal spray in the morning. And I noticed that on days I did both of those things, the sleep output that I had was so much higher than on nights that I did not have both of those factors. Surprisingly, one of the other things that contributed to my sleep was actually removing a sound machine. I would have thought the opposite, but ever since my child was born, I noticed that I tended to sleep better on those long, hard nights when there was a sound machine in the room. But I think at this point, it was actually a net negative. So those nights that I did not sleep with a sound machine, I actually ended up having much deeper sleep, and I didn't wake up nearly as much as I did if the sound machine was on. For negative sleep contributors, it was pretty consistent with what all of the different articles on sleep health and sleep hygiene suggest. Of course, the nights where I ended up staying up late and falling asleep in front of the television, I did not sleep as well because you're having that blue light enter your system so late. Additionally, on nights that I had alcohol, which is not very often, but on nights that I do have alcohol, I tend to wake up more often and then I tend to have trouble falling back asleep. So, after these trends were tracked for a total of 17 days, I prompted ChatGPT to spit out a consolidated summary of its findings, and the trend analysis that resulted was this. The first thing I had it do was create a summary based on a very basic data table. And because there were so many different factors, I did not include that in this video, but ChatGPT has the capability to do that for you should you so desire. In any case, I was able to break down the summary into a chart along with recommended actions on how I can maximize my sleep better. Once I had my summary of recommendations, I prompted ChatGPT to visually graph these different factors. This was the initial result. Now, after initially looking at it, I thought it was a pretty good start, but there were some things that I noticed that were a little bit off. For example, not all of the different factors were being plotted, and it looked like a lot of the factors were either being overwritten, forgotten about, omitted, or they overlaid on top of one another, and you couldn't see that in this initial chart. So all that to say that my first scatter plot, while it was good, it wasn't what I was looking for. So I prompted it, and this was the result. Okay, so from the first iteration, it took me 6 additional tries to get the end result that I was looking for. Again, this helps highlight the importance of validating the outputs that any AI gives you, whether or not it's factually correct or if the data elements are 100% captured, or just making sure that it visually makes sense to a human. Because a lot of times these LLMs will spit something out that makes sense in the coding, but may not be ingested the same way by you and me, which is why it's so important to take a look at these things. From here, I was able to corroborate the insights and the recommendations that Chat GPT had given me previously, and I now have a plan for success in my sleep life. As always, please like and subscribe, but any use cases or insights that you may have, please go ahead and drop a comment in the comments section. I would love to hear from you, and I would love to interact with y'all on a more personal level. I am not an engineer, and let's experiment together.